that I was able to pull up my slides from the last talk I gave, arguing that interaction design is the graphical user interface that needs to be put on a lot of the tools that are coming out of the quantified self. Importantly, the quantified self is not life logging. We're not looking just for correlations. The goal is experimental interventions. I think there's a Copernican revolution when you think about the quantified self. You can create a script that intervenes to manipulate pre-existing patterns of behavior. Rather than trying to log and observe what is, you're trying to think about sending an instruction to yourself and then monitor whether you obeyed that instruction. Rather than trying to proverbially boil the ocean and find relationships, what you want to do is just say, try and do this. The game that we were playing is try and move. Then the question is, did you comply with the instruction set? So we just went through about 5 slides so fast, and I guess that's the way the game played. I'm fine with that. One thing I would say about life logging not being a quantified self is if you go to Wikipedia, quantified self links to life logging. It's the one place where I would say that Wikipedia is inaccurate. Now you can go to the next slide. And you can go to the next slide after that. Mindful eating is the experiment that I ran. It's inspired by Robin Barua's mindful attending exercise. He talked about how lots of observations are write once, read never. And what I think he does is more WAWA, write once with attention. He wasn't actually looking at the data except at the moment that he logged it. And if people saw the video or were at the talk, what you notice is that's all he did. Obviously, Robin's equanimity in the earlier talk and this example and also his experiment with caffeine are real inspirations. I'd say we want to think about using the tools that we have for experimenting to amp up awareness. We can go to the next slide. So if you snack it, track it. If you bite it, write it. If you nibble it, scribble it. If you eat it, tweet it. And these were all from a Weight Watchers coach. This is also hers. It's not a diet, it's a live it. So the truth is, Weight Watchers tries to get you to track, but as we know, because it's an extrinsic activity, most people miss out on that. And the log falls behind. We can go to the next slide. I wanted to use technology to control and direct attention. The initial task was simply to go through and photograph everything I ate. So the first week started 9/27. I just wanted to collect a baseline. How many distinct occasions was I eating or drinking anything other than water? Next slide. I counted the photos per day. There were 160 or 11.4 a day. I noted lapses. There were a couple times where I took a picture of like an empty bowl or an empty cappuccino. There's 2 exceptions. I'm a Berkeley Jew of a certain flavor that observes Shabbat. So that means, I think Tim Ferriss says have a sabbatical, like once a week, just pig out and don't worry. Well, I was able to do something like that because I don't use technology once a week. And Yom Kippur happened during this experiment, so that day I fasted, but I also don't take pictures then. Next page. I'm not a data nudist. I was actually thinking about all the talks here, and I realized I'm a guy walking around with clothes at Plato's Retreat. For those people who are too young for Plato's Retreat, it was an orgy in New York City before AIDS. And the thing is, I really am not somebody who's going to just strip open and tell you everything I ate and every body thing that happened to me. And I realized, I think I am the first time that somebody's standing in front of a group and saying, you know what, I'm not going to show you all my data. There are ways that, as I said, I'm not a nudist. The potential aspects that might optionally be made more public are food intake, weight gain or loss, and then you might make explicit commitments. Next slide. This is a little peek if you want to do the fan dance. I mean, this shows the kind of foods that I ate. And actually, I have been thinking about various ways that you might go from total nudist to something more like a Speedo. And one way is like, if you think about the attention economy, I'm saying that this act amps up my attention. What if I wanted to solicit or enlist somebody somewhere to attend with me? So I said, you know what, I'm going to pay you with money and you're going to pay attention to what I eat. And then I'm going to interact with you, but it won't necessarily be the case that we talk about what I ate. But I will have paid you something for you to know what I'm eating. So if you can imagine, you could have a protected Twitter account or something where you're releasing it and then give various people access to that. It's a possibility. It's certainly in the spectrum between walking around naked and completely in burqa. Next slide. So the next step in the experiment is to use imagination before eating. I don't know if anybody's heard of this, but last December in Science there was an experiment that showed if you went through an exercise of thinking about eating 30 M&Ms and you compared it to the task of thinking about eating 3 M&Ms, the people who imagined eating more M&Ms had habituated to M&Ms, and then when they were given a chance to eat as many M&Ms as possible, ate less. So the truth is, you can eat in your head. And so the next step of my experiment is to try out virtual food. Next slide. Here's a couple of apps that support tracking food. I looked at these but did not use them. I actually am kind of working on my own design of an app. But MealSnap is something that's affiliated with Daily Burn. And as you see, it says, you take a picture, we tell you the calories. Somebody posted a review and said, I took a picture of 1 Oreo, then I took a picture of 2 Oreos, and it was the same. So now I can eat as many Oreos as I want. But it's using Mechanical Turk, I think. They don't really reveal what it is, but there's somebody somewhere who's looking at the picture and going, it's. So ThinCam is something that's affiliated, both of these are affiliated with sites. And I definitely think, as I was talking about interaction design, and I think Paul Abramson will say much more compellingly, that there is a larger context for supporting technology. Extending further, awareness is a wedge, okay? What if you review the last N things you ate before you eat the next thing? What if you're tested before you eat, and it says, okay, here's a food you ate in the last month, and you kind of guess when you ate it, and then you're actually being tested on whether you actually know what fell into the Hoover hole. Next slide. That's fine. Platforms for further behavior shifts. Then the point is to the extent that you're splicing something in between you and your pie hole, you can use that as a behavioral platform for putting in anything. Right? You could say, all right, before you snap the picture, you have to answer a language question, do a linear algebra problem. You have to write an expression of gratitude, whatever. Do a push-up, do something. And so, finally, decision. Can we go back to that because I didn't quite finish it? I get it. So, monitor the level of compliance, modulate the demand if the compliance to this particular splice-in activity drops. Now we can go to the next slide. Decision fatigue is your friend. Roy Baumeister's research is in the press right now. He has a new book out called Willpower. Shows that deliberating, making choices, and resisting temptation lead to decision fatigue. Now, can we go back? Can you conceptualize yourself as 2 parties? There's a commander-controller, that's the decider at T0. Then there's the executor, the actor of the script. That's follower at T0 plus N. So you set up a stream of decisions when you're in some kind of mode of rational, reflective rationality, and then you just beat yourself with a stick later because you're not. I envision it sort of like if anybody remembers The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. The Grinch is riding in the back, and there's this tiny little schnauzer who's pulling the whole thing. This decider is the Grinch. He's executing, he's telling future self do this, future self do that, future self do these 3 things. And then what we want to do is send the instructions to your future self, observe the success in implementing those instructions, and to the extent that you notice a gap between what you said you were going to do and what you actually do, you iterate. That's the talk.
Excellent. So we have about 6 minutes for Q&A. Yes.
So on the assumption that the photographing food was also aimed at controlling consumption for yourself.
I was already aware of the imagined M&Ms when I started it.
No, the one actually photographing all your food. So were you also, was the intent to eat less?
Oh yeah.
Did it work?
Oh yeah, it did.
Okay, I'm just, Timothy Ferris is
a
proponent
to tell you the
of
truth, there's ways you could game it. I took a picture if I had a second serving of something. So you could just create an enormous bowl of popcorn, and then it'd be that was one gestational event. But it did definitely boost my awareness.
Did you ever not want to take a picture? You ever find yourself wanting to lie to yourself?
No, because I wasn't, going to be strict here. But there are places like inside a movie theater where if you wanted to, you like flash, you're like, wow, But so there were a couple of occasions where it would have been hard to take pictures. But by and large, it wasn't that hard. Misha.
Did you surprise yourself with what you found in terms of some eating?
Can you set the next one?
Time of day you
Maybe
ate,
just turn
type
it
of
off
thing,
or
something like
Just turn off the screen.
You know what? I saw, even though it was supposed to establish a baseline, it already shifted my behavior doing that. So, there was a kind of quantifiable disturbance. Nevertheless, there is all that XF data on like the timestamps of my my photographs. I haven't mined that, but I kind of am interested in it. The 11.4 eating events a day is another interesting kind of thing. I hope we're setting up the next guy, right?
Yeah.
David.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So,
Did you notice any sort of,
This one. Okay, yes.
was it contagious when you started taking photos of your own food that you use other people?
there was this really cute time where I took a picture of a cappuccino. It was at the CCA, and before Abby talked and a bunch of other interaction designers. And the woman who had made it, she goes, "I'm honored." And to tell you the truth, there is this intention to somehow create gratitude, awareness, reverence. All of that is a potential relationship to when you open your mouth and suck in things.
Okay, so you mentioned your flavor of food. Do you say a blessing before food?
Yeah, I do.
And photo, how does that all work together?
Only when children are around. So at dinner we say, "May we be worthy of heaven and earth and all those who labor to provide us food." And so that's a modified Buddhist blessing. And the truth is, when I think about this game, I think you would have to, when I think about splicing in an instruction, I think you'd have to decide, this week we're going to think about Occupy Wall Street. Next week, because even though you say that prayer every day, 80% of the time it's jargon. Unless you're changing it, you don't continue to stay aware of the intention.
So is it blessing photo or photo blessing, or how do you?
It would. You
What's your actual sequence
Process.
Yeah.
Say the blessing, take it back. And I just had to take a picture of the food before I ate it.
Okay.
Sorry, another process.
Okay.
Let me just get this
Over
one.
here a little
I
bit.
just want to make sure that we didn't miss anybody.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
Roman hasn't asked.
Yes, just a quick question. You mentioned it's important to restrict your caloric intake. How about this approach that you actually work out more if you consume more calories? To burn them out?
I'm not really interested in calories, so
Let's go, okay. Yeah,
This
Dave.
is weight related.
I think even though I'm not wearing a burqa, I realize that nobody's going to believe that I look stunning in a Speedo. So, there's a certain amount of publicity about what your ballpark weight is.
Right.
And, there's also a slight improvement in that ballpark, but it's still not the case that I'm rippled, marble, and I'm just going to stand here naked.
Well, and so I'm not looking for you to reveal your numbers.
Right,
during
right.
photos.
Uh-huh.
Okay, although
Uh-huh.
that is a question.
Well, I started about 100 kilograms, and I'm less than that now. I thought of I could put up some chart without an axis on it, the way that they sell things. Robin, since you're the inspiration.
You just said that you have lost weight.
Uh,
How long?
it's just 2 weeks.
That's
And
very fast to.
the first 2 weeks are always the easiest. And again, what I'm interested in is designing some kind of app that I interact with. What you really want is something that's that literally slides between your mouth, so that unless you can unlock it, it won't allow you to proceed. So that's the goal.
great.
You have one more question, I think. Misha, go
This is
ahead.
just a process question. So you have a bag of chips that's not a one single size, right? You have a bag
Right.
of chips. So did that make you change your behavior to take out some
Oh, yes.
portion size
Yeah.
of chips
You
and
know-
then say, now I'm eating chips? Yeah,
There's
and
a
then-
great book by this guy Brian Wansink, and it's called Mindless Eating. And he showed that if you give people a huge tub of popcorn that's terrible, or you give them a little tub, whatever it is, they get to the bottom of it. And so he says, never eat out of a bag. So I read that a long time ago, and I now have my own feedback. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul.